Today, we're going to be talking about the Angela Hock case versus Nebraska. This is in the news right now. If you want to go watch it, I will have all the links down below. This is a case of a midwife who is unlicensed. So she's actually called a lay midwife, technically. And she basically delivered a baby at home, or attempted to, and it did not go well. And they were bringing a case about it. Now, before we talk about it anymore, I'm going to give a few disclosures just because it's just always good when we're talking about these types of things, that if this is not something that you would like to ingest at the moment, that's totally fine. This is, if you don't want to hear about infant loss, about difficult experiences within hospital systems, this is probably not the one for you. We aren't going to go into graphic detail, but it's always just good to have in general. With me today, I am very lucky to have Mr. Midwife, who is a midwife. So if you're new, I'm Liz. I'm a nurse practitioner. That's my background, kind of coming in and talking about all of this stuff. And we're going to just discuss it and give our opinion, like kind of just commentate on it, because it's already been decided, right? The judge decided this morning, it was a bench trial, and he decided that she was not guilty. We're going to kind of summarize the trial, go over what the charges were, what they were kind of bringing in terms of discussion, educate a little bit along the way, because this has a lot of different, there are so many types of midwives, and it had a lot of interesting kind of like medical facts with it, as well as overarching the discussion of what in healthcare has kind of led us here, which kind of ties it back to everything else we talk about on this channel, which is if healthcare keeps going the way things go, we're going to see, I think, more things like this, which is ultimately very, very sad. So that being said, welcome, Chad. Would you like to say anything? He put a disclaimer he would like to give.
Yes. So I am Mr. Midwife. I am a certified nurse midwife. I work in the southwest part of the United States, and just because of the sensitivity of this topic and what we're going to be discussing, I need to give a disclaimer. Anything you hear from me today is not medical advice. It is strictly my opinion and my experiences. I am not licensed by the state medical board. I do not practice medicine. I am licensed by the state board of health. I do practice midwifery. So with that being said, take everything you hear from me as strictly my opinion, please.
Yes, me too. That was an excellent disclaimer. I'll go with that one as well. So if you have not seen this case, like I said, it is, I will leave it all linked down below. It was going out throughout this whole week. You can actually watch the whole thing. I watched the whole thing on 2x speed. You can do the same, but we have a unlicensed Nebraska midwife. So the first thing here is we have different types of midwives, right? This is someone that you would call like a lay midwife. It's kind of a wild, wild west almost of midwives. So we have Chad here, who is a certified nurse midwife. There are lay midwives who receive there's no licensing of them, right? It's kind of people, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, it's people who kind of say, I am a birth companion. I will help you through this process. But it's sort of, Chad also has a video on this that I linked below. I watched that to learn about some of this. They will help you, but there is no licensing board. You don't go and apply and get credentialed or anything. It's kind of, here's what we are. Every state is going to have different types of midwives that can kind of work there, and what they can do will differ. Nebraska midwives cannot deliver babies at home, period. So we have a large lay midwife population, because no one wants who then attend home births, right? Because you don't want people who are licensed to be doing something that is illegal against their license. So we have a lot of people here who are not officially trained or licensed, because it's less punitive for them, because they can just be like, hey, I was just kind of like contracting here with these people to help them through a situation, versus assuming a patient role, which is what you would do if you were licensed. At least that's how I understand it. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So there's 4 different types of midwives, and so take the meaning. Midwife is Old English. It means with the woman. So anybody can really call themselves a midwife. Your husband, if he's with you during labor, is with the woman. So he's essentially a midwife. There's 4 different kinds of midwives, though. There's the lay midwife. She's the old lady on the street who was taught by her grandmother, who was taught by her grandmother, who was taught by her grandmother how to do this. There's no licensure. There's no oversight. There's nothing like that. It's just the friendly old lady down the street. Then there's certified professional midwives. They go through a training and apprenticeship program. They are licensed. They cannot prescribe drugs. Their scope is very limited, and they cannot practice in hospitals. At least no hospital that I know of in the United States. Then there's licensed midwives. Now, licensed midwives are a lot like physician assistants. They are licensed. They've gone through training. They can prescribe. They can do everything that I can do. The difference is they haven't been to nursing school, so they have no RN degree behind them, which is no big deal. They have very adequate training. And then there's a certified nurse midwife. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, certified nurse midwives are former labor and delivery nurses who feel like they just want to go on and continue to do what they do. And there are RNs that go on, they get at least a master's level degree. We prescribe drugs, we order tests, we interpret tests. We're essentially, I guess, for the best definitions, we're we're women's health nurse practitioners that can deliver babies. So we do all of women's health from menarche to menopause and everything in between, and we can deliver babies. So that's the difference, I guess.
Everything. Oh, bonked my light. Yeah, you can do it all. Yes.
Right.
That's very helpful. And then I linked this Healthline article down below too, and it kind of breaks it all down the same way. And yes, yes. In this case, we have a lay midwife, essentially. The first encounter problem that we have here in this case is that, so every state kind of gets to decide who can do what and where, right? It's kind of like the fun thing about having, everything is up to your state. So you get to decide. Since it is illegal in Nebraska, and this is kind of something that they bring up in the case and we'll talk about throughout it, any of these other people are not allowed, is like legally not allowed. You can't deliver babies at home. So everything has to go to the lay midwife. And that brings us to our prime person in this case, who is Angela Hock. And she had her own midwifery practice. And basically you could join with her or whatever, pay her, and you could become a patient of hers and she would come and accompany you through birth at home. In this case, she was doing that. And it was the second child that she had delivered with this couple. And the baby they discovered that the baby was breech. Since she does not have a medical license, it then gets very murky as about, was it legal for her to do what she was about to do? If you were a licensed professional, if a certified nurse midwife or a professional, like any of the other midwives, since you go to a licensing board, you have a huge responsibility to then do what is in the best, safest interest of this person, because not only do you help them, but also like you are expected to educate them in a way that they understand the pros and cons of this, that they are understanding the risks involved, and that you yourself have to do what's best for this human because you have a medical responsibility because you've entered into that contract. If you have a lay person who's like a lay midwife, it can be a little different because there's technically no like clinical responsibility, right? Because you are literally just someone who signed a piece of paper and said, hey, I'm going to do this with you. And that's the case we saw here. What ended up happening was the baby presented breech. So if you're not familiar with what breech is, it's ideally in the perfect world, baby is coming out and it's head first. It's diving right out of there because the head is usually the like hardest part to deliver. It's not very like pliable. Breech is when baby is coming out with usually like booty first or like foot first. There's different types of breech. We'll kind of pull it up when we get there. And Chad can tell us which one's the scariest. And this baby presented with toes sticking out, indicating that it was definitely not a head, that we were having toes, potentially cord. That was kind of up for debate. The midwife then said, hey, you can do this at home. We can continue at home, or you can go to the hospital. So she provided a choice, but not a lot of education surrounding that choice. And the couple then decided, we're going to stay home. Baby was about an hour later. The mom went into the bathroom saying she had to go to the bathroom, ended up getting the baby almost all of the way out, but was stuck right around the chest, like right here on the arms, remained that way for a very long time. They were not able to deliver the baby, ended up calling 911. Baby was born, not breathing. They got a heartbeat back eventually at the hospital, but the baby did not survive. It was brain dead. the doctor, the physician, the obstetrician and gynecologist contacted the state and reported it as child abuse and neglect. They said this child, she should have stepped in and immediately called 911 once they came in and they said, hey, I see toes. They said that should have been a hard line where you said, we need to get help. They decided today that, hey, it was ultimately the parent's decision, that she's not responsible for neglect, because it was ultimately the parent's decision to make that choice to stay at home, given all of this, and that since she is not technically a medical professional, that she was not intending to harm the baby. She was not intending to neglect them. She was giving the parents the choice, and the parents made the choice to stay. Therefore, this was not neglect and going on. Also, OB nurse Chelsey is here. Hello, welcome.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad
her name is Chelsey. So that is the basic rundown of what happened here. It's sad. It also highlights how we talk a lot on this channel about how healthcare is they're burning nurses out. They're not treating nurses kindly. We don't support people in general, like in the healthcare process. And these people chose a home birth with a lay midwife who was not necessarily they chose to do this at home with her versus someone else who maybe would have been more trained in how to do breech delivery, or had done more, maybe would have known more to call 911, would have known the risk of delivering a breech, like this particular type of breech. But they chose this because they were terrified of the hospital, because they had had really bad previous hospital experiences. And so that literally drove them to just be like, hey, we'll do it this way. And that's kind of a whole other side of the conversation. Any thoughts initially from either of you?
Go ahead, Chelsey.
I have a lot of thoughts.
As do I.
And they're not all all of my thoughts are kind of all over the place on this. Like, it really, I almost have to be asked about like a specific aspect in order to give my thoughts. An overarching thought that I have is, and this is something that I feel deeply, and I feel like Chad will agree with me. We need to make hospital birthing experiences better,
yes.
A lot better. And that will help to prevent situations like this, because then more people will be more comfortable coming in.
Yep.
So,
because that's why they didn't come in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some people are just, they want the out of hospital experience. And I understand that. I get that. But there is a safety component to birthing centers and hospitals. Mostly, we have the equipment, we have the backup. If things go south, we are seconds, at most a minute or two, away from the OR, from forceps, from qualified medical. We're just moments away from having a successful delivery. At home, you don't have the equipment, you don't have what you need there. If you call 911, the ambulance comes. By the time you pick up the phone to the time they get there, pick you up, load you up, get you to the hospital, it's too late. I worked in a different city down here in the Southwest many years ago. My wife at the time was working home health, and she had a baby that she'd taken care of. And I've had many out of hospital midwife experiences with other people, but this kid was very, very brain damaged, very, very brain dead. The midwife had been pushing with her for something like 20 hours. Finally, got the head out, got stuck, said, "Get in my car, I'll drive you to the hospital." So she loaded this mom up into the car, headed to the hospital, decided somewhere between here and the hospital she's got to stop for fuel. So she stops at a gas station at 2:00 in the morning, fills up, and then goes to the hospital. It's too late. Whatever damage is done is done. There's no reversing it. And to me, that's just absolutely inexcusable. I'm sorry, it is.
You got like 5 minutes usually between when baby's brain doesn't have oxygen and when there's going to be a whole lot of permanent brain damage. And the big thing that they were looking at in this case was not, hey, is she allowed to do this at home? Because like no one was fighting, hey, do you want to do this at home? Or even looking at, was it your choice to do this at home? It was what happened as soon as you realized, that when she went to go check her cervix, that there were feet. And part of the thing was potentially a cord. If they never could figure out in the case, there were conflicting things about cords. Friends, if there's ever a cord,
that there was
like, yeah, if there's a cord, friends, that's a no-go. That's the thing in nursing school where they're like, you stick your fingers in there, take the pressure off of the presenting part, and you're going to be there until you are in the OR and they remove the baby. But if there's toes, go for it.
After listening to the testimony, and obviously like I obviously wasn't there, so the only person who would really know is Angie. But from listening to the testimony, in my mind, she may have like mumbled cord like under her breath, but she was probably like thinking through what it was that she was feeling. I have done this. I have like checked and been like, what is that? And I feel around and I'm thinking like, is that a cord? Am I feeling a cord? But really I'm feeling like the skin on the head being all bunched up and making ridges, or fingers or something like that. And then she says toes, and like, oh, okay, no, it's not a cord, it's toes. That's how I interpreted from the testimony that I heard.
And I would think you're probably right, because she seems informed, right? This doesn't seem like someone who's never delivered a baby. Like, listening to the things that she did and she tried to do, I think she would know that if you felt a cord, that is a problem. You know what I mean? And she had referred the family previously to the hospital in their first birth. The baby wasn't progressing in their first birth, and she did send them to hospital and said, hey, you need to go here. So this wasn't someone who was like, we're going to do it at home no matter what. Like, she seemed to be willing to give those recommendations. The issue was then like, were the parents educated enough on the risks of delivering a breech baby at home in this situation? And ultimately they decided that it was okay.
And I did listen to the judge's verdict, and I wanted to hear what he had to say about it. And I actually like wholeheartedly agreed with him, because he started it out by saying the things basically that she would be guilty of that they didn't charge her for.
I thought that was really interesting too. I wrote them down later. When you're done, I'll say what they were and we can go over them.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking this whole time. I'm like, this is a weird charge.
Because it was a criminal case, in case you're not familiar.
It was a criminal case of child abuse. And I just feel like that's such an odd thing to charge.
And they even talked about in the trial that normally it's civil. They would say normally this would be a malpractice suit. Obviously, we can't charge you with malpractice since you are not licensed. So this is very different than what we would normally see, because they said she normally would have gotten charged with unlawful practice of medicine under a Uniform Credentialing Act, which she wasn't credentialed, so she couldn't do that, or a violation of a Certified Midwifery Practice Act. But she was not licensed, so she couldn't do any of those, which is interesting.
Right, which is what made lay midwives do a phenomenal job, especially if you go out in like your area in Pennsylvania, where you've got some of the Amish and some of these old ladies have been doing it for decades and decades and decades. They're extremely skilled. They do stuff that make me, wow, how did you do that? You know,
in no way do I hold the position that lay midwives shouldn't be doing things like. That's a pretty harsh statement to take, given all of the underserved populations that they serve.
Right.
For sure. I know. I was thinking that, and like initially when I went into this, I was very like annoyed at her and was like, well, obviously she should be charged, but it was a good learning opportunity to be like, okay, no, like you need to also consider what the parents wanted. And the parents did want this. Should she have educated them? Yes. But also what got them into this situation in the first place was that they've had horrible experiences, but two, that we're not like, I don't know. Yeah. The state of women, like of healthcare in general for birthing people is just rough. And if it's driving them to this, and then also that we always argue for non-criminal punishments for healthcare people. I was like, well, that would be very hypocritical of me to be like, yes, you should get that, when literally every other time I'm like, oh no, like that's a civil case, not a criminal case. So I've come around a little. I agree, Chelsey, that watching it today, I was like, I guess that does make sense. I get it.
I would be interesting to have been a fly on the wall that night in their house and just observe what education she gave them and how she delivered it. Um, there's a difference between saying, we should probably call an ambulance now, let's go to the hospital, versus saying, okay, this situation is no longer safe. I am not skilled enough to do this. I don't feel like I can get this done safely. I'm calling an ambulance, and just kind of taking the bull by the horns. You don't want to take away their autonomy, but at some point, you have to, as one who's supposed to be the professional, you have to step back, see the bigger picture, get the 30,000-foot view, and say, I'm calling an ambulance.
And it sounds like they gave them about a 2 to 3 minute spiel of, this is what this is, here are your choices. And she did tell them, which is where they were charging her with, was she did tell them that she knew how to do a breech delivery and that she could do it if they chose to stay.
I see there was a comment or a question in the comments about if the parents knew that she was not credentialed, and they signed a contract they knew from the first delivery that they had with her, or attempted delivery, and with this one. They knew that she wasn't certified. They knew that she wasn't licensed by the state. They knew that it was technically like against the law for them to do this. And then they knew of the education that she had received about the different obstetrical emergencies, et cetera, that she did have these certifications for. She had done some sort of education.
And that's what the judge brought up in his final statement, was that the parents were informed and knew. The dad wasn't so sure, but the mom was able to very clearly say when they deposed her, like when they did her interview thing, that like, I knew she was like Chelsey said, I knew she was unlicensed. I knew that she, we would not have access to X, Y, and Z, that she couldn't make us do, like that we were choosing her. We told her, or they told her, like they didn't want her to make them do anything. So they were very, very aware. And that's what the judge came down on, was you can't criminally charge someone with negligence when they were doing what a parent wanted and they don't have a healthcare license to go after and do anything about.
Chad, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is something that like I have been like rolling around in my mind, and it very much applies in this situation, but I've had it come up in my practice as well as a nurse. And I would imagine that if you haven't already, you will have this come up in yours. If a patient, let's say that a patient came in and she needed a certain intervention, like a C-section or something like that, and it was even very obvious that the risks of expectant management way outweighed a C-section, and the patient exercised their right to not take your recommendation and to do what they wanted to do. Or in my case, in my practice years ago, I had a patient who was refusing any type of interventions for herself, even though she was bleeding out. She wouldn't let us give her IM medications. She wouldn't let us give her an IV or anything like that. It is my gut reaction. And I mean, this may sound harsh, but like it is my gut reaction to be like, well, then I can't participate in your care. If you're not going to let me help you, then I can't participate in your care. But on the other side of that, if I'm being honest with myself, I want my patient to be as safe as they can possibly be. And I am not helping with that safety by saying, okay, then I'm not going to do it anymore. So like in this situation, let's say it doesn't necessarily sound like it went down like this, but let's say she had a really good conversation with them and said, I really think that this is an indication to go to the hospital. And they had still said no. What was she supposed to do? Just leave? No, that would be even more unsafe.
Well, and so this situation has come up several times in my practice, and that's where, at least this is just me. You get very real with the patient. You get very. I had a lady come in. She didn't want an IV, didn't want to change her hospital clothes, didn't want. And I looked at her and I said, I sat down on her bed and I kind of took her hand in mine. I said, why are you here? To have a baby? No. Why are you here in the hospital? To be safe. I said, then I need you to let me help you be safe. I don't need to start an IV, but I need IV access. If you don't want my help, then you can go home and have this baby in the bathtub. But if you want the safest outcome, you're here in the hospital because you want me here. Let me do my job. And after a moment's pause, she said, you're right. I'll let you do some things. She let me monitor the baby. She let me put an IV Heplock in. She let me do some things. But in a situation like this at the home birth, I think I would have paused. I would have said, look, the situation is ugly. Your baby's going to die if we don't get to a hospital. And you just get really, really serious and really real with them. Again, it's all about how you deliver the education. It gets ugly. You kind of have to steel your nerves and let ice water go through your veins. But I'm telling you, this is not going to end well if we don't do something right here and now.
But there is this whole...
If you still decide different later, then okay. But
there is this whole other side, though, that I do wonder if it was a factor in this case, because in my particular case that I'm thinking of, my patient was very traumatized. She was a victim of sexual trauma.
Sure.
And there was a boundary there that I was not going to step over. And I was not going to coerce or, we were very blunt. If you don't let us help you, then you could die. You are bleeding a lot and you could die if you don't let us. It doesn't even have to be an IV. We can give you an IM medication. You probably won't even feel it because of all of the adrenaline that's going on in other parts of your body and all this stuff. And she wouldn't. And there's a point that I wonder, like, there's already trauma there, like there's already foundational trauma from before. And if I lay it on so icy, if I get too real with them, I am just building on that trauma. Like this is where they were. This is what caused it in the first place. They don't feel heard. Mm-hmm. I come back and I say, but you will die. And they aren't feeling like I'm listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the balancing act. You have to deliver the information in such a way that they can understand it. But yeah, it's a balancing act.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm just, these are all
No, that's, and we appreciate. Yeah. And that's why I think I'm so glad that you two were able to come on. Cause I'm like, those are the things we kind of want to talk about and like play out, you know what I mean? And be able to look at.
And for those in the chat who are not in the medical field, these are the decisions that we as providers have to make every day. And you have a one-time instance one time. We do this 10 times a day. We have to make these decisions, and they're heart-wrenching. They're hard decisions. They're really, do I let you have your autonomy and let the baby die, or do I do something else that you're probably not going to like, but it's going to save the baby's life?
Mm-hmm.
In the end, are you going to be mad about it?
Yeah. And we've kind of made a whole mess of the whole situation, right? One with like, we're short on staff. Like we are not able to give the care that we would like to be able to give because we're short staffed or because we get 15-minute appointment slots, which are given to us by the people, whatever. And so people don't trust the healthcare situation as much. So they're going to seek alternative things. But also we are so legally focused. So Adrian had asked, I'm curious if mom had prenatal care, which means that the provider also knew there would be home births and have explained the risks and benefits. Both times this couple went and got traditional prenatal care at an OBGYN office. Both times they were more than halfway through before they decided they were going to go and do a home birth. The first time, I think they just wanted to do something a little bit more, see if they could do it at home, have it be more relaxed atmosphere. The mom had PTSD from previous medical experiences in her life. So like Chelsey was saying, you have to be very careful around that. So they were going to try it. The second time, she wanted a VBAC. So she wanted a vaginal birth after cesarean, which is a VBAC. And the hospital she went to said, we will not, you can do that, but we will not. And because they were afraid of the complication of something happening. So then what kind of position do we put patients in, right? Where we're saying, you can do this. This is the one hospital that you have coverage under. You cannot do it here. And so now what have we put this person in a situation of where they were like, okay, then we want to go and do it at an associated center. There was an associated center with midwives that fell under that hospital who had that same policy because they were under that same roof. So they said, you can't do them here. So literally their only option is to do it with a lay midwife at home, which is how they got in the situation in the first place. And so I think that just adds a whole different layer of like looking at this and kind of seeing that it's like, that it's messy, because it was really easy at first, at least for me, to look at it and be super judgmental of like, wow, like you chose that and you went down that path. And then listening to it, you were kind of like, oh, like, like, I can easily see for when initially I was like, well, you shouldn't have just done that at home. Like that was probably not wise, to like, oh, you have a really bad experience with hospitals. Okay. Now you want to do something that you should be at, like, a lot of places will let you do a vaginal birth after cesarean, as long as it's, you don't have certain risk factors, whatever. And it's explained to you, hey, you could have a uterine rupture. That would be really bad. We don't like that. That's why we don't want it to happen. But like, you can try, and she couldn't even do that. So we kind of like drove her in that direction. You know what I mean? Which is just sad, because this was not someone who was like, I refuse all medical care from anyone anyone who's ever gone to school. Like, no, like, and this was someone who was
that's
open
an important
to it.
point in this case. The couple did not seem like they were unreasonable, and they did not seem like they seemed like they informed themselves outside of what the midwife was educating them about. It seems like they themselves took it upon themselves to become educated in the various things. Now, if they did any specific education for themselves about breech birth, it didn't seem like it, but they're not like patients who are just like going out there doing things willy-nilly. So
yeah, they had even tried to go to Kansas to go to a different midwifery practice to do a home, like, and they were going to deliver there in a birthing center, but they wouldn't let like the husband be in the room or something. So they said no, which I also understand.
Like, so
I was
weird.
like,
that was
what? I was like, we are in 2020, right? We're in this. Okay. So this was in 2019. That's literally what mine did. I was like, what? I rewinded it. I was like, I didn't hear that right.
Did I hear that wrong?
So I was like, there's no way.
That's very un-midwife of them.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. I was
like,
where is this place?
I was like, that's why I thought you went to a midwife, so that they would be like, oh yeah.
Yes.
Bring your whole family.
Yeah, we'll let him catch the baby. Why not? Sure. Let's do it. I was like, yikers. Yeah. Brittany McDonald said, this is so frustrating and sad. I understand she didn't have a license, but she had more education about birth than the parents, and she did them and the child a disservice by not providing education. Yeah. I mean, she could have educated more, for sure. The parents even said that they did not feel, the dad at least said that he felt like, had it been explained differently, the risks of a breech birth, that they would have chosen to go to the hospital, but it was not quite explained like that. And that was kind of, I think, the crux of this whole thing. And the prosecution's whole argument was she was arrogant in assuming that she would, like, in presenting that she could confidently deliver a breech baby at home, totally fine. That was her crossing the line.
And I just want to make it clear that and I'm sure that Chad is the same, neither of us think it's a good idea to deliver at home VBAC breech. That's just a recipe for not good things to happen.
Hell no.
So if I ever say anything that seems like it's in support of the midwife, or that I don't think that she should have been found guilty, it's not because I think that this was a good decision. I just want to make that clear.
Yes. Breech doesn't seem like it's a great idea for an at-home process. I think
that was my point earlier. In hospital, in a birthing center, we have equipment. We have ways of rectifying some of these problems. We can figure this out. We can do this. At home, you've got bath towels and some spatulas in the kitchen that you cook with, but you've got nothing else. You have nothing that you need. And when you find a situation like this, time is not on your side. Now, if you look at these pictures here, the one thing that is not going anywhere is the transverse lie. They can contract all day long. You're never getting that kid out ever.
The opening's right here. Yeah. You're not. Yeah, I don't care what kind of pushing you do. You're not pushing a length of a child out of your body.
You're not doing that. It's so I'm fine with transverse lie because they're not going anywhere. It's probably the safest of all those because it's not going to happen. Um, and so, when again, going back a little bit, it's not what she said, it's how she said it, and I wasn't there. But if she were to stop and said, I'm doing the cervical exam, I feel toes. This is no longer safe. I cannot do this here. I'm calling an ambulance. And just he can be as educated as he want. Mom can be as educated as they want. She needs to step up and say, this is outside of my wheelhouse. This is no longer a safe situation.
Another point about I'm sorry, Liz.
No,
Another
you're
point about
fine.
this case that was unclear to me until closing statements, and then they cleared it up. I think that the patient had been declining vaginal exams until the one where she felt the toes. So, and obviously they're not going to have an ultrasound there. So there's not really a way that the midwife would have, I guess a Leopold's, she could have done a Leopold's. I don't know if she did. But I'm just saying she probably didn't know until that point.
And I was going to ask you too, isn't that pretty standard? Like I had an ultrasound, both times they did Leopold. What's Leopold, if you don't know, is you feel around on the belly and you can feel head, but okay, this is kind of, we know your baby's like head down or whatever kind of general way they're lying. And like with my second, she was so lodged in that like they thought that she might have been flipped because what they were feeling was like weird. So then they did an ultrasound and they checked out. Turns out she was just like really jammed in there. But like usually, don't they usually check before you deliver, or would that not be?
So I don't always do Leopold's before I deliver a baby. Usually I can detect what the presenting part is when I do a vag exam. I go in to break your water. I go in to check your cervix. Even at the 37, 38, 39 week office visit, I'm not just, I had a patient ask me this just a couple of hours ago. She said, what are you feeling for when you check my cervix? Well, I'm checking your cervical position. I'm checking to see where it's at. Is it high? Is it low? Is it in back of the uterus or back of your pelvis? Is it in front? Is it soft? When I go into the top of the vagina, what I feel on a non-pregnant person feels just like the tip of your nose right here. Now I can't deliver a baby through that, so I got to turn your cervix.
But
from
could
this.
you try?
No, and
It
you will
hurts
die
so much to get that opening bigger.
But I've got to turn it from this to this to this. When your cervix finally feels like this, I can deliver you through that. It'll stretch, it's nice and soft, it's buttery. And part of what I'm feeling is not just your cervical dilation and is it soft or not. What's the presenting part? If I run into something, I go tink, 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 tink. That's bone, that's head, unless it's a pelvis, that's head. And you can sweep your finger around and feel this nice basketball, nice hard basketball. That's a head. If I go up there and it's nice and soft and mushy, I'm getting an ultrasound because it's probably butt. And that's it. There's so much more to a vaginal exam than just dilation and effacement. I'm feeling about 9 or 10 different things all at the same moment. And so I don't necessarily do Leopold's.
That's good to know.
I can detect that with a vag exam. And if there's any question at all, I'll grab another nurse, any other nurse. Come double check me. Somebody else grab the ultrasound. Let's just make sure we're doing this right.
And Liz, to answer your question, I believe with lay midwives, they don't have this. They don't have an ultrasound equipment.
Yeah,
and
they wouldn't have it.
I paused whenever they had her contract up, and it did say in her contract that if patients want or need other tests, they have to arrange those themselves, and that to me would include an ultrasound.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That's good to know. Yeah, because it's helpful to know before you go in, I would think. But
I think it would probably be prudent for the lay midwife to have been doing Leopold's leading up to the labor. That way, if she did have an inkling that it was breech, they could have been doing at-home positioning to try to turn the baby.
There's a thing Chelsey knows it probably better than I do called spinning babies. And depending on how you labor, I have no clue how to do it. I have no clue. I'm not going to lie.
Take a class, Chad.
That's
Go
what
to one of the classes.
That's what the labor nurses are for.
I can't believe you just said that.
They can spin the babies. I got enough on my
What
plate.
is spinning babies?
Go ahead, Chelsey. You explain it.
I need to know.
It's a way, and I don't understand it. I don't. They put you in different body positions. They put you in different body positions. Chelsey, jump in here, and they put your leg up over your head, and you look like a freaking pretzel. But all of a sudden, the baby spins into the right position. I'm like, I don't know how you did that, but okay.
Spinning babies is based on the knowledge that baby's positioning is largely related to the tightness or looseness of muscles and ligaments within the uterus and the pelvis. And so if you are suspecting that a baby is in a certain position, say OP or breech or is asynclitic or something like that, then you can put the patient in these very specific positions to help loosen or lengthen one of those ligaments to get the baby to turn.
Oh, okay.
And it's very effective.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I had to do that with Piper. They didn't call it spinning. I don't know what they called it, but they sent me home with this worksheet, and I had to do it because she was flipped at 37, and she did decide to go down, and it sucked, but it worked.
No, there's times I walk into the labor room and I'm like, how did you get her? What? How did you get her?
There are definitely times. There are definitely times I will text a provider and be like, don't look at the strip for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to try to spin the baby. The baby is going to freak out for a second, but it's okay. Just don't look at it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
We had people that had their babies spinning around and then went back, which is very rude. I would be so annoyed. Because it doesn't feel good when your term baby flips upside down. Let me just say, it's not the most pleasant experience in the entire world, but it wasn't a C-section. So there we go. Practitioner said deep runners, hands and knees, pretzel jacks. Yeah, that sounds very impressive.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. JS said I spun my 5th pregnancy. Unfortunately, she spun back frank for each. That's very rude.
That's very inconsiderate of the baby.
That's very, very rude.
There's Walters, there's Froggy Walters, there's Flying Cowgirl, there's lots of different positions.
Those sound like how you get pregnant, not how you help resolve the pregnancy.
Listen, how you get them in is also how you get them out.
Chelsey, we usually save this conversation for after we're not live anymore. God.
Bumping it up. So I just wanted to bring up the different types of breaches more as an education point, because we were particularly on this topic, and why breach is particularly concerning. Because while I was watching I was watching it on, I forget, a court TV on YouTube, was watching this whole thing, and people in the chat were just I was just being a lurker, but they were I don't understand. Why are they breach? Why were they didn't, there was a lot of misunderstanding about why breach was more risky to deliver at home. And we have wonderful people here who understand it very well. So I thought we could talk about it, and that there are different types of breach. And those all have different implications. So in a normal baby, your head comes out first because that's hard and it doesn't squish quite as nicely. And at least how I understand, it's kind of like a cork, right? So the head's holding everything behind it, the cord and all the things. Once you get the head out, then you're probably going to be able to get the other things out, as long as your shoulders don't get stuck, right? And that's a whole different problem. But that's, head, biggest, whatever. And the cord's not going to come out and get tangled because it can't get past the head, because the head's gigantic in babies. You have different problems if other parts are coming out, like a foot. If just your foot falls out, your cord can fall out with it. We don't like that. We don't want your cord to get stuck. And then your neck can get stuck, right? With what happened in this case, because this part is less, the body is more squishy, and then they couldn't get the head out because then you're trying to get a chin out, which can be very difficult. But I'll let you guys describe really quick, if you would, the different types of breach and which one would make you more scared. Do you deliver breach at all? Chelsey, have you guys seen breach delivered vaginally? Because the OBGYN that they brought in, she had never even done a breach delivery except in the OR on a twin.
We only do it when our patient refuses a C-section, or if it's too late. There is a point, if she comes in and she's rumping, that's what it's not crowning, it's rumping.
It's rumping?
Rump. Yeah. If they're rumping when they come in, then then generally a lot, depending on the doctor that's on, they'll just go ahead and do the breech delivery. But if it's before then they advise them for a C-section. And if they refuse, then we are just stuck doing the vaginal breech birth. And real quick, the way that I always explain it to my patients of why vertex is better than breech and why there's a problem is because of the neck. So if my body is coming out first, then my shoulders whenever my shoulders come out, then my cervix is kind of going to want to close around the neck because it's forming down, and then it has to reopen to get around the head. This is not a problem whenever we're vertex, because when we're vertex, the baby is smushed like this. So it's pretty easy to go over both. Just like in a nice line. That's why you don't kind of run into the same problem, because the baby's shoulders are squished up like this whenever they're coming out. So that's just the way that I like to.
So it's like a nice little arrow versus trying to pull the arrow out and then you get stuck on the chunky part of the arrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's called head entrapment, and like Chelsey said, you get the rest of the body out, the cervix closes in around the neck, and then you're screwed. I've delivered a couple of babies that way when I was a labor and delivery nurse, and luckily the babies were really small. I had to literally reach in the vagina, grab the cervix with both fingers, spread it open, and then pull the baby's feet to get the kid out. And you have to pull in it. You can't pull down. You got to pull up so that the head will flex the correct way. And we've delivered a few breaches. It's not fun. It's usually not planned, but there's a way to do it. They teach it. You'll learn that in clinical bound there, Chelsey, how we deliver breech. And it's a matter of you get one leg out, then you get the other leg out, and you let the body sort of dangle. And then if you can, you reach in, you grab the mouth or the chin or whatever you can and pull the baby's head down so it bends down like this, which is more the natural angle if it's coming vertex. And I've seen one of the doctors I work with, he'll get the feet and everything out, flip the baby upside down, and then pull it out and sit it on top of mom's tummy, which is the same concept as pulling it down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a bad time.
There's like a whole way you have to like get the limbs out and, across the body. There's a whole, there's a lot that goes into it.
And it's not fun. Yeah, it's not fun. It is scary. And let me tell you,
it is very scary.
Your sphincters pucker every time.
Everybody is just like 10 out of 10 the whole time.
You want to vomit every time.
You don't want a baby's head to be stuck, right? That's problematic. And also the cord is coming out at this point, I would imagine, right? If you're doing breech, your belly button is out. As soon as the baby's belly button is out, that means there's going to be a cord attached to it. And if that gets stuck in there, you're cutting off blood flow, right? Because it's attached to placenta up here, which is smushed on face.
I also want to make a quick point of something that came up in the trial. And that was several people, including like the husband and then the paramedics and EMTs who came on. They were saying that the midwife seemed very calm. Like there wasn't a lot of urgency. And that could be that she didn't realize the urgency and emergency of the situation. But I have parents tell me all the time that they didn't realize that there was a problem going on. Like we've probably said it, but like we try to keep things like very like calm voice. Because if I as the person that's like in charge of the room as the nurse, I want like everything to stay way down here, so that people can hear each other and that nobody is the hot girls are here. Nobody is like getting too worked up because that amount of adrenaline doesn't really help anything. It just hurts. And so practitioners can be very concerned about what's going on and like working 10 out of 10 as hard as they can to fix a situation, and on the outside appear like everything is like totally fine. So I just want to make
and
that point.
that's a really good point, because they did harp on that. And I think I probably appear the calmest when I am internally medically having the most panic. Like,
Yes.
Walking in and you're just like, okay, this is fine. Like, but then you come in with something very minor, like a gross infection that I have to debride and stitches. And I'm probably like, oh, okay, I'm fine. This is going to be okay. They're like, am I okay? I'm like, you're fine. You are.
And Chelsey's absolutely right. This woman probably trained the panic out of herself. You see enough situations, it takes time to learn the skill, but you learn how to be calm despite. And like you, Liz, when things are going south in a hurry, I purposely slow down. I purposely hit the brakes. I purposely talk quiet and steady, because right now everybody's panicking, and the loudest voice in the room is the quietest voice in the room. Everybody needs to stop, listen to me, and here's what we're going to do. And that's how you have to be. Sometimes the loudest voice is the quietest voice, and it's the only one that's going to be heard. So
yeah. So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Chelsey, because that's very true. They all were very like, she wasn't worried, blah, blah, blah. But is it helpful to panic? Not really in that situation. They were where they were, and that's what it was. Should we maybe have done things differently? Yes, but that's also not what the parents wanted. Which then comes back to what kind of choices can the parents make? Like, as a parent, what choices, where does that come down to, like, respecting, oh, you didn't want them to call 911. You didn't want to go to the hospital. Okay. Do you have anything, like, when you're in practice and a parent wants to do something, like if they wanted to do a breech vaginal delivery, someone had asked, why couldn't the parents just sign a consent form? JS had said his parents signing in form, not enough of a consent, like not to do, like, instead of having a C-section, which is standard usually with breech deliveries, is you just do a C-section. I would imagine it's litigation wise, because you don't want to get sued. Like, people don't want to take on, even if the parents say this is fine, they still don't want to have a lawsuit later when the parent decides later, like, that it's not fine, that something bad, really bad happened. Where do you guys draw the line there with having people do things? Like, you obviously don't want to force people to do the things. Do you let them have, like, where does that line get drawn? Where it's like, this is very unsafe and could hurt all involved, but, like, also I don't want to make you do this.
Patients always have autonomy. We can educate a patient until we are blue in the face about how their baby is going to die because they have a placental abruption or something like that, and their baby isn't getting any more blood, and we have to do a C-section. And we can educate, and we can educate, and we can educate. If they refuse, we cannot do surgery on a patient out of their will. Like, we just can't. Wow. And so, I mean, that is assault, and that will get you in trouble. Now, once the baby is on the outside, things change for the baby. Mom still can do whatever she wants, but if the practitioner believes that there is enough of an ethical question happening, then there are avenues to get other possible, like, ethics committees or something involved for decisions about the baby. But the mom, until that baby is on the outside, the mom has complete control over what gets done to her.
Wow.
And as far as me, again, I'm a midwife. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not an obstetrician gynecologist. And so I can only do what I'm trained to do. I can only do what I know how to do. And so I've read about breech deliveries. They trained us in school on dummies, but I've never actually done one. We're supposed to be able to do vacuum extractions as well, but I've never done one. So it's all a matter of, you can sign the consent all day long. I'm not trained to do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's also just like, knowing what you can and can't do. And being like, well, you would have to find someone else to do it because I, like, can't. And then I wonder where that leads you. Like, if they're like, well, we refuse, do you send them somewhere else? Like,
Well, I had a patient the other day. We're setting her up for her third C-section, and she asked me, "Could I do the C-section?" I said, "No, I'm a midwife. They don't." I said, "No, I'm a midwife. They don't let me play with knives. I can be there, I can assist, but I'm not going to hold the knife." And she thought about, okay, then what surgeons do we have available? And I told her the other two people in the office that could. She's like, "Okay, let's go with this other guy." And again, we can sign the consents. I can't do it. It's not within my licensure or purview. You said a couple of episodes ago, Liz, that you couldn't write for narcotics for a while because you didn't have a DE number. You can't. It's just sorry. It's not within. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't fly 747 either.
But I'll try. No, just kidding. Don't do that. And that's super. I think that's interesting because I've never had to run into that as a provider. The Jazzy nurse says at home anyone can call EMS, but they can refuse to leave with them. Because this was my solution to everything. Because I did not work in emergencies in family medicine. I literally could go in and be like, "Linda, you're having a heart attack. I'm going to call you an ambulance, Linda. No, I will not be giving you oxycodone for your chest pain, so it will go away. You are actively trying to die. I will be calling the ambulance. It will be out front. They will try to come put you in it. But if you say no, I have at least done my part medically. We don't need to drag you into it." But then I can kind of be like, I mean, not to be like crass, but I have done my part to be like, well, here we are. In labor and delivery, you can't just be like, well, I'm done now. Here we are. Like, you have to get the baby out.
So let's say that she had gone into the hospital and they had told, that's what I was laughing. That they had said, okay, we don't support a vaginal breech delivery. We recommend a C-section. That's what we want to do. And they had said, nope, no, thank you. I do not consent to a C-section. The team is not going to just like leave her in a room. They're going to go in there and they are going to assist her in that vaginal breech birth. We can't just leave them there.
Right.
It's actually there's a little thing called EMTALA.
Yeah.
Right. In the hospital, you've got OBGYNs who've got a lot more training than I do, a lot smarter than I am, who know these techniques, who probably, I went through school start to finish in 3 or 4 years. They went through residency in 3 or 4 years, plus their medical school, plus everything else. And so they've at least seen this a couple times. They know what to do. I can still deliver you vaginally. It's going to be scary, and we're all going to hold our breath for a minute, but I can do this. And maybe save you from a C-section.
And you can go up the chain of command too, it sounds like, which would kind of be what it would have probably happened had they gone to the hospital, would have been, hey, even if you have like a midwife on staff who in the certified nurse midwife didn't feel comfortable doing it, maybe you could then kind of be like, hey friend, like, is there an OB-GYN resident or is there a OB-GYN that could actually do this, and like go up the chain, which is, I had a midwife deliver my first and something went wrong. And that's what they did, was when it went wrong, there was many people all of a sudden and they were like, we're going to go get Dr. So-and-so. And the thing happened, but it was convenient because I was there in a hospital where all the people could come.
Any midwife with that's worth their salt will have no problem giving up the keys to the car and saying, I need help. I need extra people in here. I need to go up the chain of command. Anybody that's worth their salt will have no problem kicking it up the chain.
Yeah. And we can get this image off. I was just showing this because in the thing they had talked about too, going backwards 8 million steps, there's different types of breech presentations. Some of them seem more safe than other ones. And you can let me know, like the footling things, that sounds bad because the cone, if you're an arrow, you're going from smallest arrow to biggest arrow. So you're going to get the most stuck in Chelsey's analogy. This Frank one, full booty seemed to be the best because you got widest before you got smallest. So you kind of like rocket arrow, you still are in an arrow. And then complete seemed like you had to do a lot of maneuvers with getting legs and sweeping things. And that sounded like a mess. So that's why that was up there. Was that the very accurate description? Should I basically be a midwife?
That works for me. There is one other aspect that we have to consider during a breach is she proven? And what that means is, has she had a baby before that's approximately the same size that she can fit this kid out? If she's had a prior vaginal birth at 7 pounds, 7.5 pounds, and this breech baby is measuring at 7.5 pounds, she can probably do it. But if she's never had a baby before, I don't know what her pelvis looks like. I don't know what her, we can get that kid's body out and get stuck on bony structures. Never mind the cervix and the cervical entrapment. You've got this kid stuck in the bony pelvis. There's no way to go except up. You got to take her back for a C-section, cut her open, reach down there and pull it all back up through the vagina and get this kid out appropriately. I've done that only one time, but I've done that. And you're like, oh, God in heaven.
And they had talked about that in this case because I remember them saying something about that because her first baby had failure to progress. So the baby, I don't think ever came down. They had to do a C-section because they were not coming out.
It seems like it was failure to descend, which is a little bit different than failure to progress.
Good.
Failure to progress is whenever the cervix doesn't dilate anymore, but it sounds like she made it to complete, but she had failure to descend. So the baby wouldn't actually come down. And they also said at one point CPD, which I have a hard time with that diagnosis. It's like way overdiagnosed, I think. And it really, you need pelvimetry to diagnose it. So CPD is cephalopelvic disproportion, which means that literally the head was too big to fit through the pelvis. It used to be diagnosed a lot, and we're moving away from diagnosing it because you really need like pelvimetry. You need to know the actual dimensions of the pelvis to be able to say that that was the actual problem and not, insufficient contractions or maternal effort or something like that. But she did not, as Chad said, she did not have a proven pelvis.
And
I feel like I probably want to advertise myself in some way. Like, I have a proven pelvis. Hi, I'm Liz.
Well, and failure to descend is a really good indication to do a C-section and not deliver breech. There's a reason that baby didn't come down far enough, probably because her bony pelvis was too narrow at some point, and the baby just got stuck on the bones and couldn't come down anymore. And so that's a really terrible. That's a really good indication to do a C-section. Really terrible indication to go ahead and proceed with a breech.
Ugh.
Yeah, is right.
We'll add it to my list of credentials. Yes. Proven pelvis. People will be like, what? I'm like,
PP.
Don't ask. Yeah. PP. Don't ask. Don't ask. You might not want to know. But yeah. And I think Adrian's having a very good side conversation in the chat, kind of talking about how,
just like with herself, but I've been watching it.
Yeah, no, but I appreciate her, in her fevered state, but she's making a lot of sense. Adrian doesn't feel good, friends. So everyone send Adrian healing vibes. The state of having babies in this country is scary, right? Can be very scary, because it's a scary experience. It's not very kind to a lot of people. It can be very dangerous. It's just, there's a lot that changes within it. And especially if you don't want to have a very specific type of birth, not all places respect that, right? The world is not filled with Chelseys and Mr. Midwives who are like,
it should be
like, where you're like, yeah, like, let's figure this out. If you don't want to do the things, like, we will figure out a way to get you there. It can be very, where you're seen as a problem if you don't want to do things the perfect traditional way, where you show up and they give you an IV and they're like, hey, this is how we're going to do, and blah, 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 blah. You're going to stay in the bed. We're going to do it. Like, birth is something that has happened for a very long time, and it has definitely become very medicalized. And I feel like it's just kind of fallen apart, where we don't have a lot of happy middle, where we could be like, maybe we could do this with like a little bit of both. And I think that plays into it a lot. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I think that is a huge part of this conversation. Whenever we talk about like this type of stuff, is that kind of parents choosing how they can should be able, and we should be able to have backup plans. And there should be no, like, I don't know, I feel like there's probably a lot of shame for people who do a home birth and then it doesn't go well and then they come into the hospital. Sounds like maybe that was the case the first time around with these parents. The second time they said this hospital seemed very nice, even when they came in with all of this going on. But I also just wanted to say that. Just trying to bring some other factors into the chat for viewers later. This is why we love you, Adrian. I was just highlighting it so that people would actually read it. I wanted them to see your comments because they're good.
I love your comments. I've been hoping that Liz has been starring them. So I've just been like, we'll come back there.
Yes, that's what they're all in like a little column.
And it's a balancing act. Adrian made a good comment quite a while ago about, this becomes constitutional. At what point do we stop letting people have autonomy over their own kids and their own bodies and their own selves? It can be a really sticky situation. It just can be.
And like, it's not, and like Lisa said, it can be particularly dangerous for women of color. Yeah, that adds a whole different layer where we don't like listen to certain, like people are historically not listened to very well, and then outcomes are not as. So I totally get, and I don't want this to come off as, which I don't think we hopefully have this like a midwife bashing, like, oh, if you're not a certified nurse midwife, you shouldn't be doing anything related to this. I think then we need a lot of other people to be helping do this too in the community, because we just don't, there are a lot of people that do not go to traditional medical care for this type of thing, and just insulting them is not necessarily it's not going to do anything. Like Chad said, I live near Amish country. These people aren't going to a hospital. They have their little like midwife that has been doing the thing for like 50 years. And
yeah, and I could learn some things from some of these Amish lay midwives that have been doing it for 900 years. I could learn some things from them. It wouldn't bother me to learn them from them. So everybody's got their own place and their own niche. I guess know what you know, and know when you don't know it anymore, and when you've got to get help.
That being said, I wish there were more birth centers, like Em said, like just attached to hospitals, because I feel like you would get a very good combination of, I worked in hospitals way too much. I was going to be delivering in a hospital. I was going to be like, I'm like, do you have rooms by the OR? I would like that one, like shortest distance possible. Like just keep me right there. I also was very team epidural. So I was not going to be the person.
Birth in the OR that we're here.
In the OR. Yeah.
We do that for twins sometimes.
Yeah. Like I'll just go there. That's fine. Thank you. So that was my going into it. But like, I do wish there was this more birth center type of things where you were like right there in the event, because when things go bad, and a lot of like when they go bad, they can go bad very quickly, where you want to be able to be within minutes of getting a lot of help, right? And getting that baby out. But could we do that with a lot less intervention? Could we let you kind of do your thing? And then when it get like in a birthing center, and then when it gets bad, like we're like, oh, well, it's a good thing we just have to go right across the street. Yes. And I wish we had more of that, but.
So JS made a comment that said we need providers free to collaborate. And this is huge. This is why there was conversation in the trial about midwifery laws in Nebraska, because this is an important part, because Angie, the midwife, like she literally could not collaborate with the physician. It just is not allowed. Whereas in states where midwifery is very integrated, like Washington State, there is so much collaboration there, and it only helps everybody. So even the home birth midwives in Washington can collaborate with physicians at a hospital. So they are all on the same team. And if they have a patient who they're afraid might be starting to risk out, they can have that conversation with the OB, and everybody is on the same page. There's no, it makes things so much better whenever there isn't fear to say. One thing that came up in the trial that was like scooted over, I think there was an objection to it and they had to drop it, but it was asking the OB who had taken over on care whenever the patient had gotten to the hospital. They asked her if this was her first ever, like, home birth or whatever. And she said no. And they asked, is this the first time that your patient has ever told you the name of your home birth midwife? And she said, yes, this was the first time. And this is why. Like, this is why patients aren't going to say, is because their midwife is going to get in trouble. And it's just like, there's so much here other than just the specific points in the case. So.
And someone had said that Arkansas or not, or is that where, no, what
Nebraska?
is this? Nebraska, my brain. To be honest, I think they're all the same state. I'm sorry if you live in them, but my bad.
I am in the Midwest. I'm in Missouri.
I'm so sorry. I don't know where you are either. Michigan, Indiana, Ohio.
I
live in
border
Michigan.
both. I border both Arkansas and Nebraska. I'm kind of in the middle.
Perfect. You're kind of like very invisible there in the minute in my mind. I'm like, but that's now where I'll think of it. I'll be like, okay, everyone here, Michigan, Indiana, Chelsey. Okay. That's
the whole
where
state.
we are. That's how we are. Someone had said in the chat that Nebraska has a lot of issues around types of thing like this. And it's because it is illegal to have babies at home in Nebraska versus most states don't necessarily have that limitation. They won't say like nurse midwives cannot deliver at home. They don't make it illegal. And so you're able to have discussions around it. You're able to get training without having to go underground to try to learn. Like the midwives can learn and say, hey, I want to be trained in home birth things because that is legal here versus in Nebraska where it's not legal and you have to like cover it all up. And that's not helpful. That doesn't help with anything. Right. And yeah, I bet no one tells them who, you know, your midwife wouldn't want to go with you to even like provide that transfer of care because they're admitting she says she got a flat tire and that's why she didn't go to the hospital. But I'm sure other people have tried to transfer, if that's true, to the hospital and they wouldn't want to go in and give like report because the ambulance asked her to go and she said no because she was probably terrified something bad would happen to her versus, you know, if there was communication and accepted collaboration, you could go and say, here's what exactly happened.
And, you know, I went traveling for a while and I did a travel contract out in Nebraska, in Western Nebraska. In Nebraska, there's places like Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, parts of Kansas where you can drive for days before you hit the next town. And so the lay midwife, whether you like them or not, they may be the only healthcare provider for miles and miles and miles around. So to shove them underground and to make them silent and to stifle them, because they are good. Some of them are really, really good, but to stifle them and make them go into hiding just doesn't benefit anybody.
No.
Especially if they're the only one for miles and miles and miles around.
Yep. Not good. Not good. There's a lot of people sharing sad story or like not sad, but just like stories in the chat. So thank you if you're sharing. I'm not going to put them all up here because I don't know if you want me to like blast them all over the internet. But thank you for sharing. And I think it shows a good, like that this is a very difficult topic for a lot of people. Like a lot of people have been harmed through having babies. You know what I mean? So this is not something that, you know, this is a mess. And this is something that I hope we can see a little bit of change with because a lot of people have babies and a lot of people, this is their first major interaction with the healthcare system. And if it's negative, I had so many people that would come into my office and they would be very sick or really not doing their blood. You know, they were coming in because something was not good and things had gotten to a bad point and they were in their mid 40s. And I was like, when was the last time you saw healthcare? They were like, when I had my babies, I hated it. This blah, 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 blah happened. And now I'm here. I'm like, and when was that? They were like 15 years ago. And I was like, okay. Like, and I get it. Like, I mean, it's sad. It's sad. Aaron said the OBs barely acknowledge the midwives. Yeah. Oh, even in states where home birth is legal, home birth midwives aren't very welcome in the hospital. In California, I was a doula and I had to transfer some home births and the OB barely acknowledged the midwives. And like, that's not helpful either. Right. When we're just not acknowledging people at all. Don't forget word of mouth. Yeah.
Brittany McDonald is one of the ones that you starred, and it says, was it the parents that sued the midwife? Oh. And no, it was the state that brought charges, and they never explicitly said it, but my feel was that the parents did not want this prosecution.
That was my feel
like
too.
They were still in support of the midwife.
Well, if you watch the news clip, that they show a portion where the father's testifying, he's defending her.
Yeah,
he's defending the midwife, so he obviously didn't want this either.
Yeah, they were on the prosecution's list, so I don't know how that happened. Like she got to present their information, but that's the people going against the midwife. But yeah, they were not the ones that brought it. Yeah, that's probably true. The state brought it. So the state had to decide that this was basically the OBGYN conferred with her colleagues after the whole situation went down. And they said, yes, you should report this as like a negligent event. And she did. And then the state decided to try it and go after it.
Oh my gosh. There was this one, just while you're trying to find something, if you're
I'm
trying
trying
to
to get Scott. You asked for the link. I was like, oh God, hold on. You
there
know
was
how good
this
I
one
multitask, Scott.
point in the trial where they were reading, I don't know if it was emails or if it was like a recorded phone call or something of that doctor, but um, she said something to the effect of, if patients choose to VBAC at home, they are already proving that they don't care about their babies. And I was like,
Yeah. And then she had to retrace
when they,
that. She was,
yeah, she did. She was like, that's harsh language, but
yeah.
I do support ACOG's position on home birth or something is how she like saved it. But I was like, oh my gosh.
And I wonder when she had said that.
Talk
too.
about things you don't ever want anybody else to hear.
Yeah.
That's a
Yes.
harsh judgment to pass on a person because you don't know their
Mhm.
heart, you don't know their past experiences. There's a lot that you don't know, and to them, they're making the best decision. What if we're wrong? Which is why I don't like to be the only voice here.
Mhm.
I'm loving the fact that Chelsea's here today because she offers an opinion, and Scott and Liz have, and even Adrian has turned my mind on several things because I never considered that. So
See,
you can't pass
opinions
judgment
are
on
important.
people. Yeah, they are, but you
We're
can't pass
softening
judgment on
you.
people. You oh yeah, probably. You can't pass judgment on people. You haven't walked in their shoes.
Mhm. And yeah, the mother in interviews, they said they didn't blame her and they would use her for future pregnancies. I don't think they were not allowed to use her. They had, I think they have 2 or 3 more kids now. They did not use her for future ones because I think this was going on. But they did use her for that. And yet it's not ideal to say what she said. And I hope she changes her mind about, oh, she said they don't care. They don't care if their babies die, which is not true. I do not think people choose to have babies at home because they don't care if they die. I think they do it because they are scared, and they are scared of what would happen at the hospital, and they don't feel like they would be heard and respected as humans.
And as somebody who works in the hospital, like I pay attention to that. Like that feels like obviously it's not personal to me, but like it feels personal to me. Like what do I need? I obviously need to be better. We need to be better. I don't want people to feel like this. I want people to be able to trust me and come in and feel cared for. And I want them to be able to have as close to the same experience as they want. And so, whenever people are choosing these choices that might be more risky, I see it as a red flag to me. Like, what do I need to do better here?
And having delivered enough dead babies in my life, there's not a single dead baby that I delivered that the parents didn't care. Not a single one. Every one of them were devastated, absolutely devastated. Whether it was at 5 weeks or 40 weeks, they are devastated. So you can't say they don't care. You can't.
And Kate said, although I had a home birth, I was pro intervention as needed. And this is what I wish we had more of. Just this was like, I would like to do this at home, but I am also fine with interventions as we need them. And I am open to that. And then Jazzy Nurse said so many cultures have home births. And that reminds me of one thing that when I was listening to the video, was the defense kept asking, sorry, you can probably hear my children screaming in the background. They're just, they're inside. They're just children. She asked, did you go over, if you had someone who was coming in to have a birth in the hospital, would you go over the pros and cons and give the pros of having a home birth? And I think a lot of cultures do home births. And I think there are like benefits to that. And I think we're very quick to dismiss that. At least I know I have historically been like, I have gotten a lot more, like Chad was saying, compassionate and understanding the longer I have worked in healthcare, because initially I would have been like, well, that's more dangerous. Like, I hope I wouldn't have been like, you want your baby to die, but I think I would have definitely been like, you don't care. Like, that's very, you are not thinking clearly if you want to have it at home. But I think there are benefits of having a birth at home. Like hospitals suck when you're having a baby. A lot of the times they wake you up all the time. They, like it's rough. Like it's uncomfortable. It is not your house. You are allowed your one person versus having more people. And a lot of there are cons to it. And while yes, I think that is safer to probably have your baby in a place where there are more interventions available. I don't think we valuing, there is a stigma against people who are having babies at home when there are definitely benefits. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a good point that different cultures also highly value that and have a huge structure around it where you have lots of people who have been to many births, and they come in and they're supporting you in a lot of different ways. And yes, there's that whole side. Nurse Scott, have you ever delivered a baby in the ER?
I have not.
You have to leave.
Well, the closest I've
Get out of here.
I told you when I had my little red box as a brand new nurse and ready to deliver babies and save lives on the side of the road. I always thought there'd be an elevator somewhere or an airplane somewhere. I'd have to deliver a baby. The closest I got was working at triage and someone rushing in going, "Someone come out. My wife's having a baby in the car." I'm like, okay, grab some gloves. Let's see what this is about. Someone tell the charge nurse, the doctor. And we go out and there's a woman in the back seat of the car who's huffing and puffing. And I'm like, okay, I said, I know we're out here. I got to take a look. And I peeked and I'm like, okay, I don't see a head or anything. Someone brought a wheelchair and all right, here we go. Do you think you can get a wheelchair? The doctor came out also and peeked. And he's like, I see a head. I'm like, oh, well, so we got her on a stretcher and we rolled her in through the lobby into the ER.
Scott is not familiar with that anatomy. Everyone should be.
There's
really nothing there. It looks totally normal.
I knew what a head coming out looks like. Okay.
Are you sure?
It's not a face. That's not what you just did.
No,
it should be like that. Okay. We don't want to see this. That's a really bad day.
Yeah. So I'm holding her hand. I'm holding this woman's hand while I'm pushing the stretcher through. And she looks up at me in the middle of her huffing and puffing and says, "So no epidural?" And I said, "Oh, honey," I said, you're going to be done in 2 minutes. There's no time for that. So we got her in the room, and sure enough, they had me do a little fundal pressure, and she, and out came.
So you've delivered a baby.
Little baby Rose. I didn't catch it, but I was there. I kind of helped.
That counts.
No, nothing like these two. Nothing at all.
Oh, in Scott's defense, you can go from 0 to head out in a sneeze. So it doesn't take more than a split second, really.
So I could have, if she had sneezed, I could have.
Or coughed or anything else. Yeah.
Or coughed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Many a vomit and cough and laughter have birthed a baby.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my god.
I think this was not her first, and it came quicker than she expected. So it was nice. It was kind of a happy, and we did have, I wasn't my patient, but we did have one of those. I didn't know I was pregnant. They're doing the pelvic exam on a woman with abdominal pain and go, guess what? No, I can't be pregnant. Yeah, well, whose baby is this then? Because it's coming out of you.
Because it's coming out of you. So
it wasn't my patient, but it's still my story to tell, I suppose.
Funny story. A couple of weeks ago, we had a lady that wasn't pushing effectively, and she coughed really big. And here comes the head. We're like, "Good, cough again, cough again."
Somebody get some
she
pepper.
coughed. She coughed a couple of times, and we had a baby. So.
I'm with M. That was not my experience. If only we could have all delivered with a sneeze. Yeah, no. No.
But Liz, you've had more than one. So is it true then? Did your second one come easier than your first?
I think it's unfair because my first one, she attempted to enter the world like this.
Oh, how rude.
And it was really rude. It really went unwell. And my second one behaved. And like Chelsey said, was an arrow. So, my second one was very much the situation where you woke up and then called the nurse and you were like, "I think I have to go to the bathroom." She's like, "Do not move." And I was like, what? And then Piper was born. She showed up and she's like, "Okay." Avery, not so much. So I can't really tell because Avery it was very different.
But I guess that goes to the point of why these guys have a hard job is because no two births are alike. Some, come out like this and some come out with a sneeze and everything in between. So good on you guys for being able to handle all that.
Lisa's had 9. As a mom of 9, my fourth was the fastest and easiest. And after that, they started to get into weird positions. Hard mode, mom. I can be weirder than that one. Watch this.
Each one's like, "Hold my beer."
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, might be
What
our
did you do
presenting
last
part.
time? Let me see what I
Yeah.
can do.
Let me show you presenting part with my knee. Here we are. No one's thought of that yet.
I'm
But yeah.
just gonna go out there and let you guys all in on this little secret of the weirdest thing that you will ever feel whenever you are checking a cervix is a hand
Oh, no, thank you.
that moves. Like
Oh.
I have literally, I was just talking earlier about how I try to stay really calm in emergencies.
Like it's
I was
hanging
checking this
out?
patient. No.
Okay,
But
I'm imagining
there,
it
like
you.
whenever you check, so like if you check the cervix and like they just have like their little, they're just like this, and you're like, and then, but what's weird is like they'll move them, and you're like, because things aren't just supposed to move in there. And I literally jump every time. I can't stop myself. I like jump, and they're like, "Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yep, it's fine."
Just shook your baby's
Just some
hand.
fingers.
It's fine. Yeah.
just not used to things moving in there. It's fine. I'm just gonna give them a little pinch, and I'll pinch their fingers, and they'll be like, "Ew," and they'll like take their hand away.
Oh, that is weird. I don't like it.
Weirder still, and it's probably happened to Chelsey. You go to do the vag exam, and all of a sudden you've got this little hand that grabs your finger. You're like,
no.
Something grabbed me in there.
No.
Again.
Oh.
You pinch its finger, and they reflexively take it away, so it's gone. But something just grabbed me.
It's you're just not used to feeling moving things in there.
No,
and
you are not.
It's startling.
No, that would be very startling.
You're like, that wasn't there last time.
I have in no way had that, but Piper used to push up when I was in labor. With her, she would push up with both of her her feet on my whatever the thing was that, what do you call them, the Toco monitors, and she would push them off. You could see her little toe just pushing it, and it would like move it. And I was like, I don't like that at all. I don't like that.
Well, she didn't like it either. She's like, get this off and wait.
Like,
I don't like that. Move that away.
Not at all. So Scott, did you have any comments?
No, I've been on listening here, and I understand people that want to deliver at home. I understand. My first, without knowing much, is women always go to hospitals to have babies. Women have been having babies, in huts for thousands and thousands of years. But then again, babies have been dying for thousands and thousands of years because they were born in huts. And so, I understand why people would choose not to, but boy, when you look at it, don't you want that backup, just in case? And God knows these hospitals throw all their money into the L&D departments to try to make them attractive to women and more homey. And they have,
Do they?
I don't know. A lot of them are. Well, it's a lot more home. It's a lot more
Scott
of a
lives
homey
in California.
environment in L&D.
Oh, you live in California. I forgot.
No, I've seen this in other states.
California is like unicorn place.
No. It is. It's another country, but I've seen this back in America too. And, they have it decorated nicely. They have some nice furniture. And some of them, they had even all the equipment closes up behind the bed in a wardrobe. The big doors closed, so you can't tell it's a medical room. Then they can open that up, and there's all the oxygen and suction on your monitors. But still, you're right. It's not home. I get that. And, as far as this midwife goes, as long as the people know what they're getting, if you hire somebody who's not a professional, then you need to not be you can't expect to hold them to the same practice standards as a trained professional. This is obviously not my area, but it's been very interesting to listen to your perspectives as people who are in the biz.
Yeah, and thank you both for being here, and you too, Scott. But Chelsey and Chad,
It made a comment that said childbirth, one of the most dangerous events a woman will experience in her lifetime. And I just wanted to make a comment about this because I was thinking about it. Whenever, I think most of you know that I have been sued before, and my lawyer told me this thing, and it has really stuck with me ever since. And I really internalized it. And what he said was, people inherently know that childbirth is dangerous. They just do. And he said, if this goes to trial, my case, which it didn't, he's like, if this goes to trial, then in my closing argument, I will say, all of you jurors, think about the first time that one of your family members had a baby. And you guys were all anticipating and waiting during labor. And then everybody wants to know the baby was born. And their first question is, our mom and baby healthy. And then everybody can take a sigh of relief. And it's because everybody knows inherently that things can go wrong for like just out of nowhere with no anticipation. Things can go wrong. And it's something that we don't like to think about, but every person breathes that sigh of relief whenever baby and mom are safe after delivery. And that has really like stuck with me because it's true. Now, in this case, I definitely think that there were things that could have been done that could have made this much safer. Like the defense said, however, it's never guaranteed. A repeat C-section has its own risks as well to mom and baby. So you can't say that it would have been 100% preventable. Now, probably statistics show it would have been, but you can't say for sure. So, but I really come back to everybody knows inherently that childbirth is dangerous for both mom and baby.
That's a really good point.
That is a really good point.
Convince the jury is you all know this because you've had this reaction, which means you know this is true. And sometimes things go wrong. And that goes for healthcare in general. Sometimes things go wrong, no matter if everyone does, even if everyone does the right thing, you can still have bad outcomes.
Yes.
But we were always taught in OB, it's like everyone wants their Gerber baby. And when they don't have their Gerber baby, they like to sue. And so that's why this is a very, there's a lot of lawsuits in this area. But you're right. People do know that it can go wrong, and it can go wrong even if everyone, and it's, I think, human nature to want to blame someone when things go wrong, even if there's no blame. It's like, you just have to be mad at God. You can't be mad at Chelsey if she did everything right, or Chad if he did everything right. You're just going to have to be mad at fate, at the universe, because this is the hand that you've been dealt, and it's sad, and we all, feel for you, but you can't place it where it doesn't belong.
And that's the same story, be it in the labor and delivery unit or in the emergency room or in the ICU. We are trained to keep you alive. We are trained to do the best we can. And sometimes you just get a bad hand dealt, and there's nothing you can do about it. We put up all the barriers. We put up all the precautions. We do everything we know how. There's not a single healthcare provider that I've ever known of that says, I want to cause harm today. There's no mom that goes into the labor and delivery unit to say, I want to deliver my baby dead. It just doesn't happen. They're there because they want a happy and healthy outcome, and everybody wants to go home.
And not to say that mistakes are never made. Obviously, mistakes are made all the time. We were talking about medication errors several times, and whether or not that should be criminal or not. And after the fact, when a patient is harmed, and mistakes are made, and those people need to be held accountable in one way or another. And we can discuss that at a later date again. But it doesn't bring back someone who's died, and it doesn't give you back, function of your leg if you lost function because of a mistake or something like that. But I think we do, but we sue because we have a sense of justice. Like, this person needs to be punished, or I need to be reimbursed monetarily for my pain and suffering. And, I don't know, money can't buy happiness, but it can provide some security, I think, for people. And that's why they do it.
For sure. And I don't know what the political situation in Nebraska is surrounding midwives, but I would have to bet that for this case to get this far and for the state to decide to go after it, there is, knowing that they do not allow home births, I'm sure there is some kind of, like, if anyone knows about Nebraska's political landscape, I'm sure there's some kind of something that someone was trying to get someone's attention or appear like, oh, I'm prosecuting this case. Like, I'm going to take this case. I want to prove this point. Like, midwives are bad and evil would be my guess of they were trying to appeal to
scare the other lay midwives.
Exactly.
Like,
to scare the lay midwife. I think Jay Michael had said there's another midwife case coming up in Nebraska soon. Like, so clearly this is something that they're trying to get attention to and like push along a narrative. And because I don't think they just probably like randomly picked it up. Jane Atkinson has said she was unlicensed. So why was she employed? She was self-employed, like a contractor, to accompany people who wanted to have babies at home through that process. So
because there are no certified practitioners that can do that home births in Nebraska. So if somebody is going to have a home birth, they can either go with a lay midwife or they can do it completely unassisted. Which is
now what's strange to me though is because most nurse practice acts make it illegal for you to deliver nursing services for hire without a nursing license. So you can't say, well, I'm a CNA, but I'll, or I'm not a CNA, I'm not an MA, I'm nothing. But I took care of my mom when she was sick. So I'm going to hire myself out to take care of my neighbors. And they hire me for a few bucks an hour, and I go in and I, make sure they're doing, it's like, you can't do that. That's practicing nursing without a license. But I suppose because of the nature of childbirth, you do sometimes have family members assisting in, and a neighbor that comes. It's a long tradition, I think, of lay midwives that I guess that's not covered in the Nurse Practice Act. Otherwise, this person would be practicing midwifery without a license. But I guess there is no such thing. Or
well, since there's no license, since she has no license, and it is not, and there is no modality in Nebraska for people to be able to do this at home, because they could have come after her and said, like, if midwifery, if you were allowed to have home births in Nebraska, maybe they could come after you and say, well, if you were, Chad was talking about at the beginning, all the different types of midwives, what if one of those was allowed? You could have said, if you want to do this at home, that's fine, but you have to be a licensed, whatever, midwife in this setting in order to like do those things. So you should have at least been that. And then this would have been fine. But since she has no licensure, she has no accrediting body, it's almost just like if you're just hiring someone to help you out with something.
So if she's helping someone give birth at home because a licensed professional isn't allowed to do that, that's not considering infringing on the practice of midwifery.
No, it is. It really, she could have been charged with impersonating a doctor, or like whatever, practicing medicine without a license.
They just didn't go after that.
They didn't do that. Like the judge even said in his verdict, he basically listed all the things that she could have been charged with and probably found guilty for, but they didn't charge those things. They charged child abuse that resulted in death, which.
And they didn't bring a lesser charge. So they kind of, in those things, you can kind of say,
they were really putting all their eggs in that one basket.
They were like, here's neglect. And the judge said, you do not have enough to show, like, because she did all these other things afterwards to try to help. So just not providing enough education and admitting she was probably needed help earlier, like, wasn't enough to show like neglect. And he even brought up other like misdemeanor charges that she could have been charged with. He's like, you could have put this and you could have put this. And it was kind of interesting. You were like, oh, wow. He's like, but you didn't list any of those. You just went with the one and there were no lesser.
It makes me wonder if they're going to go after her, now that he's pointed it out, they're going to go after her and charge her again for other things.
I don't know if you can you? Isn't that?
She hasn't been charged with that specific crime.
Can they do it?
Then it wouldn't be double jeopardy.
Double jeopardy doesn't attach.
I would be very surprised if they did.
Yeah.
Look at you learning all your things from LawTube, Chelsey. I knew, I was like, there's a term for that. It's double jeopardy. I was like, I know there's something in there where you can't do it twice.
Although she got convicted,
very impressive.
If they did charge her with a lesser charge later and she did get convicted, then she could appeal that and claim double jeopardy, and then we'd see, if they ruled that double jeopardy for the same act being charged for different crimes. Like when they charge someone for murder, do they go back and charge them for assault afterwards if they don't get a murder conviction? Not usually. No,
but they usually wrap up. They charge with assault and battery and first and second and third degree murder. They attach them all.
That's the interesting part. They could have put all of these in the same trial. They could have added all of this together, but they didn't. They could have done practicing medicine without a license and all of these things together in this one trial, but they didn't.
Bottom line, she was providing a service for somebody and it went south. She may have acted silly, but I don't think she's acting maliciously. And
no, but she's providing a service that's restricted. That's like, I can go sell someone.
But they were completely aware.
And she said it. Yeah.
But there are certain services that we provide to each other you have to be licensed for. So I can go to my neighbor and say, hey, you need your boil lanced, or your toe removed or whatever. I'll do that for you. That's no problem. In fact, just give me a couple of bucks. Now I'm practicing medicine without a license. It's not that he knew I wasn't a doctor, that he gave me money or he didn't give me money. You can't do it if you're not licensed. Those are the rules we've made. And somebody said, how much power does the state have? We are the state. We all made the rules. I mean, not directly, but when we say the state, they talk about us. We as a society have said, hey, there's certain things that we want people to do when they do them to be licensed first. And medicine, dentistry, nursing, accounting, all these things, so it's not like you can say, well, the person didn't know. You just can't do it, period. And that's why this is odd to me. And what you're saying is they just chose not to charge her with practicing nursing without a license or practicing medicine, but they well could have. And
but then Scott, what do you do when a pregnant woman says, I'm having stomach cramps and I don't feel well, so I called my mom, and my mom came over at 2:00 in the morning and boop, helped me deliver a baby. I didn't even realize I was pregnant. I just thought I had an upset stomach.
Yeah.
There's is mom practicing medicine without a license, or is it, there's the line gets really fuzzy.
The nurse I don't know about other professions, but the Nurse Practice Act in most states will have a clause that says nothing in this act shall preclude a member of the family from assisting the members of their own family or members of an organized and established religious group from attending, caring for the ill within their congregation. So mom, I think, is off the hook in that case. That's the good news. And the details make a difference too. So if she had said, "Mom, when I have my baby, I want you to be there. I'll pay you $50." That's different than, "Mom, come over. I don't feel well," and whoops, we had a baby. So that would enter it too.
But I think it also brings in an interesting concept of, like JS said, like informed consent. Like, is that really who has the ability to say, if you want to do this way, and you knowingly enter into an agreement with someone that you want to have your baby at home and you want them to be able to go through it with you, like, who really shouldn't you as a human have the ability to, like, know if you are given full informed consents, pros and cons, be able to make that choice?
But
you know what I mean?
I don't know if you're all aware of the old saying that informed consent is neither, which is funny you bring that up, because that's one of the chapters in my book that I'll be recording for the podcast that I just started, just to promote my own stuff. The emergency mind, the psychology of ER patients, families, and staff. And one of the things I want to cover is informed consent. And there's an argument that says it's neither. You're never really fully informed as a patient, so you can never really give full consent. And
the doctor in this trial said something like, she just said something like, you can never, and I've often thought this, there is no way, if I as a nurse and Chad as a provider are constantly having to like relearn things and like stay up on stuff, there is no way that a patient can be fully informed. There's just no way, because I myself, as somebody who lives in this specialty every single day, am still informing myself. So
and I
agree.
I, as a patient with some medical background, know that when I sign a consent form, I've been informed of the risks and benefits, and I kind of wave those off like there's always a risk of infection, a small risk of death, whatever, but I mean, there's probably stuff I don't know either or don't fully understand. And there is always an element of trust with healthcare, even with this informed consent, for just those reasons.
Trust is a big part of informed consent.
Yeah.
Shared decision making really should be used. And it seems like that's what this midwife, that was her model. She always did shared decision making. She gave information and then allowed the patient to come to their own decision, which is how it should be.
And that people clearly don't think that's happening. Yeah. What did you say the question should be?
The question is how much information did she give the correct type of information, which can she really be held liable for, because she doesn't hold a license? There's nothing to hold. There's no standard to hold her up against too. So, yeah. And I feel like we've just come full circle.
We have. Welcome. That was a good, that we made it all the way back. Well done. Well done. Is there anything, so I think one of the big things like here was that these people obviously, and someone had said like that they wouldn't condemn them. I don't think we're condemning them either. I understand why they chose what they did. I wish there were different options for them. And I wish we had a healthcare system that was more empathetic and willing to listen, and that was not so dangerous for these environment and so harmful. Is there anything, if you could tell people, like, what is something you have found to be helpful to help bridge that, like when people come in and feel very vulnerable, and like Chad, like you said, when that person like was not wanting, like just helping them connect and realize like, oh, hold on, let me focus here for a minute. You are trying to help me. Is there something that you found that was helpful, that is helpful in these situations, or you wish other people did like if they're new into this and they're going into labor and delivery, that you wish other people did, just so that it is more of an experience that is positive versus people feeling unheard and wanting to just go and do like underground midwifery at home?
You want to go first, Chad?
No, go ahead.
I think that the thing that I have done in my practice, and I think that it works, and is to be honest with the patient and respectful, truly listen to them, and show them that you are going to respect their wishes, even in the smallest of things. Because if they can see that she's respecting my wishes to keep underwear on during my labor, because I don't like not having underwear on, I'll take them off if we need to do something downstairs, but I'll keep on my underwear, and she's okay with me doing that. If they know that I'm going to respect that portion and I'm going to respect this other little portion, then I'm just building that trust, so that if there comes a later time whenever I level with them and I say, this is really important, and this is what's going on, these are the risks, this is what I think that we should do, they are more apt to listen to you and trust you, because they know that you have been respecting them the entire way, even on the little things that don't seem to matter, and showing them that you'll go to bat for them. So if my patient wants intermittent monitoring and she's low risk and she is a candidate for it, then seeing that I will approach that physician and I will say, this patient is X, Y, and Z. She really wants intermittent monitoring. I don't see any risk factors. I would really like to do this for her. So the patient seeing that I'm going to put myself out there for the patient can really go a long way in building that relationship, so that whenever I need to cash in that trust, it's there.
That's awesome. Kind of knowing what you need to, like in parenting, when you're like, am I going to pursue this, or am I just going to let this one lie? Like, wait, like letting, even if it's like not what you normally do, kind of like letting it be, so that you can fight the battle that you really might need to fight eventually. Not that it's a battle, but you know.
I hope everyone heard what Chelsey had to say, because this is what a good nurse looks like. This is why we deserve the money that we're paid. This is what it's supposed to be like. As I've told people for my whole career, it's really easy to go in your job and do it really half-assed. Go in, start your IVs, give your meds, chart, go home. But to take time to develop a rapport with a patient, to go to bat for them, to really care about the outcome and do everything in your power for a good outcome. This is what a good nurse looks like, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
And we know her. How cool are we?
I'm cavelling.
Represents the entire Midwest. We know the whole Midwest. And she's cool. Chad.
The thing is, nurses like that don't make the news. It's the one that make mistakes and get charged with things and are beating patients and leaving them in their own filth and get in trouble. You don't get news stories about when it all goes right. And I have a feeling that Chelsey's not alone. There are a lot of really good nurses out there.
Chelsey's the best.
There are.
She's one of the 4 best nurses in this chat right now.
Yes. Erin said, this is so much why I'm pursuing labor and delivery. Laboring people should be respected like that. Yes. Yes. And as much as we complain about nursing on this channel, also we need people to go into it and be awesome like this, so that when people are having babies or need any general hospital care, you have someone that is caring and will will stick up for you. You know what I mean? So thanks for doing what you do. You're the best.
I feel so loved.
Chad, are you ready for your pep talk? Please give us your speech first, and then we'll proceed.
So I do a couple of things, and I'm not sure what really works. I just do it, and it seems to work for me. In the OB world, I bring in dad and any kids that they already have. I bring in the 3-year-old that they had, that they delivered a couple years back, and I bring the whole family in. The first time or two, I show dad how to get the heart tones and how to, measure mom's belly, and I'm constantly educating them. And then by the 3rd visit, I walk in, hey, how's it going? Are you feeling baby move? And I just hand the Doppler over to dad, and he immediately goes to work finding heart tones, because he knows what to do and he knows what he's looking for now. That builds trust. I've educated them. I've allowed them to do it. I've involved them in the process. And sometimes and then the other thing I do is you get somebody who I don't want a C-section. Okay, why? What's your concern? And it takes time. And time is something we don't have in healthcare. We have 15 minutes, but it takes time to resolve their concerns, find out what their concern really is. She doesn't want to be cut. She doesn't want the scar. She's risk of infection. She doesn't understand it. She's scared of anesthesia. What's your concern? And once you get down to the concern, you take the time, again, that word, to resolve that concern. You say, well, actually, the truth of the matter is this and that and whatever else. For years, I had patients say, I don't want an epidural. Okay, why? Well, because my sister had one and she was paralyzed. That sister right there sitting in the chair, yeah. Well, she's walking now. Well, yeah, she was paralyzed the whole time she had the epidural. Yeah, that's the idea. That's what you want. You don't want to feel, or you don't want to feel as much. She's walking now. She's not paralyzed. It's not a permanent thing. Yeah, I would like the epidural. But you just have to work through their concern. Sometimes you can resolve it, sometimes you can't. But you at least give them the time to vent, to get their concerns out, and perhaps have it resolved.
That's something I learned right away is people don't come to you as blank slates. They come to you with their own past medical experiences and their families and friends. So when they say, they have a fear of something, I was a nursing student trying to put an NG tube down a person's nose and they threw a huge fit. I'm like, I know it's uncomfortable, but as I asked her mother had one when she died and she was associating that. So yeah, of course. Or if you've had a bad experience with a surgery or someone has treated you poorly or an OBGYN was inappropriate with you, yeah, you're not really going to be anxious to go back and have anybody do a pelvic exam on you. So it's exactly what Chad said. You have to explore, where does this come from? Is there anything I can do to refute or to correct some mistaken ideas? And that does take time. It's
a very long process too. I will say I've had a lot of if it can be very delayed gratification, very. So even if you're out there doing these little things and you don't see it because you work inpatient and you see people for this tiny bit of time, know that your kindness in that moment and your understanding and willing to work with people will pay off later. Since I worked outpatient as an NP, I would have people then who were treated in a nice way in the hospital, or I would do something one time and then months later, they were willing to move an inch on something I never thought we would move an inch on because they were like, but you did say that one thing and that was nice. I was like, what? I was a really long time ago. They're like, I've been thinking about it a lot. So you just never know when that one thing will be that one good interaction with people that then might be a tipping point for someone who's had a really crappy experience so far with medicine and everything. And we have a book recommendation.
You know what they say, though, I forget who the quote is, but people may not remember what you tell them or what you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And so, Liz, you obviously made that person feel listened to. And it took a while for that to simmer and come to fruition, but it did. One of the things I always have done is I realize I'm a big, tall, white guy, and I'm dealing with people who are not at all like me. And sometimes I'll even say, look, you got no reason to trust me. I know you just rolled into the ER. You got me. You don't know me from Adam. But this is why I'm telling you this. This is why I'm asking you to do this. And hopefully the more, we're together, you'll come to trust me. But I completely acknowledge the fact that you really have no reason to trust me. And sometimes they're like, yeah, he's right. He gets me. At least that much he understands. Little tricks like that sometimes can help.
For sure. And you have a very trustworthy beard.
Well, I don't
know why, but people with a good beard, I'm like, yep, I will believe whatever you say.
We'll see. I had a baby face all my career, so we'll see.
Just now imagine it when you're a nurse practitioner, they'll be like, wow, okay.
Yeah, the gray hair. Yes. I know what I'm talking about, even if I'm brand new, because I got the gray.
Hey, I have a ton of it, and it does. People, they're like, oh, wow, yeah. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're graying all over. You must have seen things in your life. I'm like, yes, we'll go with that. Also, Kimberly Davis is done with nursing school, so massive congratulations to you. She's a free elf. Pinning ceremony is on Monday. That's super exciting. If anyone else has any wins, feel free to share them, but that is very exciting. That's the best moment. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, nursing school is, you're done. You don't have to think of it anymore.
Congratulations.
Scott, how did you finish out? How did you finish out the semester, Scott?
I'm maintaining my 4.0. I'm glad to report. I got my A in pathophys. Got my A in
Same.
evidence-based practice. I
Good
figured
job.
you too. Good for you.
That's awesome. Are you both done with
Same.
finals?
Yes. I've never been so relieved to get a 42 out of 50 on a patho test.
That's amazing.
I was like, oh my God, is that
My
enough? That's what I was saying.
Is it enough?
Carry
Is it
the one.
I raced over to the grades portion.
So do you get to?
My last one wasn't as good as my previous ones. I had that one I had a problem with, and then I was getting like 100s and 99s, and the last one I got like 24 out of 30. I'm like, ooh, that's not great. Wait, let's see. Oh yeah, still in it. Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of how
I've never had that feeling, but I'm assuming it's wonderful.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Of what?
Especially after working your ass off.
I was more like, I was like, where? Okay, this is how many points I need to just never take this class again.
Well, I calculated it out. If I had gotten like a 25 out of 50, I still would have passed. I didn't calculate it out though, how much I needed to get an A.
I did.
But I was taking the test and I was like, oh no. In my mind, I was like, oh no.
I was so glad to be
Chelsea's-
ahead. By the time I got to that last test, I was ahead enough that if I had not taken the test, I would have gotten a B and passed. I had that much room. I had the 30 points wiggle room.
That's nice.
I didn't want the B.
I didn't.
I wanted the A, which means I could have got up to, I think, 6 wrong. I got
Same.
4 wrong. So I was like, that was close, but all right, I'm good. So
You need to come up with like a donation system where you could like donate those points to like little Liz's. We're just like
unfortunately,
that's how it works.
Like you can donate PTO sometimes at work.
exactly. Just be like, oh man, she looks like she's really trying, but that girl's struggling.
I've got exactly 4 extra points that I don't need in order to maintain my 4.0. Please give them to Liz.
She looks.
I think
She highlights so much. I don't know
seems
what's
like she
happening
needs
over
them.
there. Yeah, but there's a lot of frantic typing and coloring, and girl looks stressed. Okay, she's got like 7
Like a
cups.
Christmas present.
Exactly. I don't know what's happening, but please help her. Erin also.
Chelsea's going to the same school that I graduated from, so I understand the agony she's going through some days. I get it.
Are you going to go into like classes you like now? Like, do we enter classes
No,
that might
I
that sucks.
I have 2 more. So you guys will probably see less of me next term because I will be doing farm
Farm is
and
the best.
and advanced physical health assessment. And so I will die next term.
I will die. And
But if you don't, won't that be great? Yeah, I got farm and population-based care and healthcare policy. And then I do next summer, I do advanced health assessment and go into clinicals.
But did you die?
But did you die? I actually liked policy more than I thought. I went into it with a really bad attitude, but it got me mad about all sorts of things, which I like. So maybe it'll make you
a lot
mad
of these
mad.
classes, it's like, I don't want to take nursing theory, but it's like, well, there's some interesting takes on what we do. I don't want to do evidence-based practice. Oh, well, I get to actually research a disease or a condition that I'm interested in, or, I don't want to do informatics, but it's kind of interesting because I'm relating the computers to like a disease that I can use a new app for whatever. In that class, they made us choose a disease that we had no experience with, so I picked preeclampsia. So
there you go. And then you're going to like be forced to learn about it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt going through patho. Like each system that we got to, I was like, oh, this is going to suck. And I was like, I could totally see myself doing genetics, like cardio. This sucks. And then I get to the end of that. I'm like, I think I could do cardio specialty. Seems like fun. So yeah, all of it, ironically enough, until I got to endocrine, which is actually about a lot of my specialty. And I was like, this sucks. I don't like
awful.
this.
Yeah. Literally, I don't know how anyone is an endocrinologist at all.
Kind of interesting.
Or a rheumatologist.
I did know that the diabetes part was really important because from what I understand, the bread and butter for FNP is hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. So that's something I absolutely have to know.
That is, yes.
It's not as complicated as I thought. I guess you can get into the weeds with the details, but the basics of it, I think are.
And that's what you need to know, or for primary care, especially, of the basics. You need to be able to base level explain it. Erin finished with a heavy nursing semester of pharm, med surg, and foundations, which sounds like absolute awfulness all at once with a 4.0.
Nice.
Again, mind blowing. Mind blowing.
Impressive.
So well done. Lisa, did Lisa do something as an instructor? I just got hired as a professor of nursing in the BSN program locally.
Wow, fantastic.
Yay! I like ending these with a little win. This is a good wrap up to everyone's semester. That's awesome. Your students are very lucky to have you. You'll do great things. Go inspire the masses. And one day maybe you can be as cool as Chelsey. Try hard. Oh yeah, Chad, we forgot your pep talk. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your insight. We're so glad you're here. Your patients are very, very lucky. I hope you know that, because I would, if I was having a baby and I lived on that half of the country, I would come have a baby with you, not with you. Maybe delivered by you, but I'm not having any more babies. You know what I mean? I think you're amazing.
Yeah, I do.
And you are changing the world of having babies for the better. And I think you're inspiring other people to change the way they look at having babies and being involved in their care.
I'm trying. That's all. I'm trying.
You're doing a great job. Brittany says you're doing a great job.
That's the thing. The people that are doing a really great job don't even sometimes know it. There's like, I'm just doing my job. I'm not a hero or anything. When actually it's like, ask some of your
Don't get me on my hero soapbox.
Oh, I know. But you ask some patients and they'll say, that person really changed my life. I needed them at that moment, and they were there for me, whether it's in the ER or in the L&D department or anywhere else. A lot of the good that we do goes unrecognized, and we never even know. You just have to trust that you're doing good work.
I know I give a lot of people indigestion, but other than that, that's all I take credit for.
Yes. And Scott, we like you too. You're great too. Thanks for saving the world.
I love Scott. He's my bud.
Meh. I'm just kidding.
Chad made me invite you, so if we're being honest.
For a big tall white guy, he's all right.
If we're being honest.
I'm just kidding.
Adrian had a book recommendation because she has the best book recommendations. This one, which is Midwives and Nurses. I love the title. A History of Women Healer. And maybe that's a conversation for a whole different day, because I feel like you could go down that rabbit hole regarding midwifery in general. I think it is very over medicalized, but it's a huge moneymaker, right? And it has kind of been taken over by, it's interesting. I have looked into this before, and it is very interesting how it got taken over and didn't go well initially, because they started to kill everybody by not washing their hands, which was a bad time.
The medicalization of childbirth, is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
We have a whole class in our program about the foundations of midwifery and how it's changed in the United States over the last 200 years.
And it is different in different countries too. It's fascinating to look at that from how other countries, it's very different, and our outcomes are not so great. And we're like,
But you bring up the hand washing. Who was it? Semmelweis that decided it was hand washing that was killing people. It's that one stupid little thing. Wash your hands. A little soap and water changed healthcare. And who knows what little stupid thing that you and I and Chelsey and Scott are doing today, and Adrian are doing today, that what's one stupid little thing is going to go forward and change everything. I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but who knows?
Well, it won't be immediately accepted, because even Semmelweis was laughed out of town.
No, he was laughed out. He was scorned, but now it's required.
Yeah. So what it was, if you're not familiar, is they would have medical students or something going and delivering babies, but they didn't wash their hands in between. So everyone was dying of sepsis. And then there was a midwife unit where I think they did wash their hands. Is that right? And they were doing fine.
I think he developed one. It was kind of a control study, random.
Yeah, and they were going from doing autopsies. The phicians were going from doing autopsies, to delivering the babies, because that seems like a good idea without changing your clothes.
God, yeah.
Well, this is when they were still lighting incense under a woman's hoo-hoo to get rid of the hysteria. I mean, it was a time when they didn't even really capture the germ theory of disease. So,
and it was before.
It was revolutionary.
Yeah, and before gloves, so I'm touching you in places I probably shouldn't be with my bare hands, and then I'm going to the next patient and touching her in the same place with dirty hands.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
And then I go over here and I perform this autopsy with my same hands.
I'm gonna go
And then
snag
I
a
come back
bagel
into-
real quick.
Or
A
clean up,
baguette.
help clean up a patient who's pooped on herself.
Oh God.
Okay, let's deliver this baby.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now it looks absolutely ridiculous, of course.
Yeah, but then
Obi,
it was,
Chelsey, I'll be looking forward to the presentation of your paper from that class sometime soon. You can do it with Erin. I think Erin did a paper on it too, she said. So
That can be a good
present.
first YouTube video, which if you are not
History of
subscribed
midwifery?
to, yes, there you go. An angry rant. I'll join you. I don't know anything about it, but I'll just be there for anger. Adrian can be there with her passion on the top. We'll be fine.
She will know, literally, she'll have the ears for us. She'll know it
Yes.
all.
It'll be perfect. But the gentlemen here also have YouTube channels. Chad's should already be linked down below with his video on midwives. And then Scott has one too that I will link below. And Chelsey's going to have one. It's in its, it's gestating. It's currently thinking about what it would like, when it would like
Who
to be
knows
birthed.
how long
Yeah.
I have to carry this pregnancy, but
We don't know. We don't know. She's also got a lot going on. So
Be sure to wash your hands before you deliver your channel to the world.
That's right. That's right.
see where it's going to go. All right, friends. Well, thanks for being here. This is a good discussion. I am endlessly grateful for both of you who are a world of knowledge on this topic. I think it was great. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And yeah, I have oodles more with these lovely humans where we do every Friday. So if you want to see more of these, just, do the subscribey things. Like it if it was helpful. It tells the YouTube gods that you liked it and you think maybe your neighbor would like it. And we appreciate it. And I forgot. Oops. I'll get in trouble for this. 2 people helped sponsor this video. One was Rita. Rit. Sorry, I blocked your face off, Chelsey, who bought me a coffee and said, thanks for your channel and helping me get through a difficult time I'm having with my life. I'm sorry you're having a difficult time. I'm glad we could provide a distraction, because sometimes I know that's what my YouTube channels do for me a lot, is just distraction. So I'm very honored that I can help you do that. And I hope things get better soon. This is a hard time of year for a lot of people. And I hope it just goes quickly if you're dealing with that. And Diana said, thanks so much for your videos on your experience with anxiety and Zoloft. It helped me reassure me to make the decision to take my own for my anxiety. Your videos are so valuable. Oh, thanks, friend. Yeah, mental health is important. Take care of it. There's no shame. A little bit of store-bought serotonin.
I should have been making a funny face when that came down, and I missed my opportunity.
Dang it. There's always next time.
Next time.
But yeah, thanks, friends. I will see you later. I think we'll do this next Friday, but on a chill topic, like just Chilies and Chill was suggested on Tuesdays, where we just chat about weird stories and just chill and chat, because it's right before Christmas and we need that. And remember, my friends, as this season is either difficult or hopefully jolly, that you are not alone. You're more than enough, and you can do all the hard things. Bye, friends. Dang it. Who said, Kate, thanks for the super chat. You're the best.